Warm welcome to all the panelists and to our audiences here for this session. So this is like our first stage appearance for this day on stage. So thank you so much for taking the time out, and I'm looking forward to a quick and a very insightful discussion. So a little on the theme, about the data mesh. So this is a relatively new concept in terms of kind of trying to get a distributed data architecture which can kind of possibly help data science teams to have a more democratic access to data. This approach has, I think, gained currency among organizations, but I think different industries are at different curves at this point of time. And this discussion very quickly will be focusing on where we are in terms of understanding the data mesh journey, the concept, the idea, and where we are. The feasibility of the adoption of a data mesh approach, and also what are the guardrails we have to really look at, and what is the way forward. So given that, I think we have, like, incidentally, all women leaders here, but that does not take away any currency from the fact that they're going to come back with, what do you say, a kind of a very sharp discussion without, the previous year, in a similar IP of ours, I had the privilege of kind of leading an all-women's discussion. The topic there is featured around the fact that women data science leaders are now kind of taking center stage. But this discussion today goes further and goes conceptually into what, these leaders are doing. So this is a different panel, but nevertheless had to kind of give you a retrospective of a sense of deja vu from my end. Anyways, so thank you so much. Let's move further into the discussion. I've got some questions for you. Very quickly, bringing Nithya into the discussion here. Nithya, welcome. So to understand, there was a lot of change in Kelloggs last year. There was a split of entities and so on and so forth. Lots of data that comes in, in the kind of industry you are. What has really changed, in terms of looking at your data journey, and where do you see yourself, like, in this piece of developments that happened? So how do you see data mesh as a concept, and how has it really evolved for you now, given these changes?
Thank you, Shantheri, for the question. Just to clarify, the organization is called Kellanova, right?
Correct.
And Kelloggs happens to be a brand. So is Pringles, right? So is
I thought it merged into two entities, right?
That's a long history.
Yeah.
Right? But to make it short, about a year back, it got demerged into Kellanova and WK Kellogg.
Correct.
And now the recent story is quite different, right? Kellanova is kind of going to become a part of Mars, right? So that's in public, so I can talk about it here, so no problem. So so just wanted to kind of clarify that. But yeah, I mean, Mars or Kellogg or Kellanova, whatever we call, we are a typical CPG organization and food processing organization, right? We make cornflakes, we make salty snacks, and now we are also going to be in confectionery and pet care, right? So in fact, you by mistake said data mess, right? But that is what we had been when we started.
I'm kind of fruitfully dyslexic at times.
So we did start with the total data mess for sure, right? And we did have a data lake, but it was kind of out of proportion, kind of blown out, because we were dealing with all sorts of data from all various, business streams, from all various markets, right? All our commercial data, which is predominantly your marketing, sales, brand, category, promo data, etc., along with the supply chain and manufacturing data, along with the finance P&L data. Everything was together at once. Of course, we did our best to kind of manage that on the data lake. But, we kind of got into several challenges, right? Of course, one was the inefficiencies of governing this whole monolith, as we call as, right? Data mess, right? It was huge. Secondly, there was very, the time taken to derive analytics out of this data, right? If we measure that as a KPI, it was very high, right? And the people who were managing the data were not essentially subject matter experts, and they were not even consuming the data. They were just, I would say, quote unquote, middlemen or postmen kind of people who used to kind of, ask, tell us your business requirement, we will do the data analysis, we will know where the data has to be picked up and stored, and then we will deliver the results for you, right? And they, the business knowledge and the SME knowledge in the team that was managing and governing the data and insights for us, that was very limited, right? So likewise, we had lot of issues, and of course, self-serve analytics was not even a thing, right? Though the business was asking, right? We talk about on leadership tables, data democratization, but where is it? Right? Show us, give us our data so that we can do our analysis, right? So these were some open-ended questions. And then we kind of moved from, and all this happened after the spin, because, spin did not have an substantial effect on this, right? It all happened after the spin. So we moved away from data lake, and we moved more in kind of a federated data organization by the domain. So we have a kind of a mini data lake, if I may, for commercial analytics, for supply chain analytics, for finance, etc., right? And within, say, commercial, we have got data products, right? So this, say, for example, your promo data product, your pricing product, your consumer data product, right? So this has given us a lot of freedom to scale up and scale out. It has given us a lot of benefit in terms of governing the entire data ecosystem, and the ownership is very clearly defined now, right? So it's a business which is owning the data and the data platform, and not the IT team. This is a good change I am seeing, right? Because now the business is kind of empowered, it is in control of the data that they generate and they consume the analytics of, right? And the time to analytics is also decreased, and the business is having data in their hand, and they're pretty happy and feel empowered about it. We have given them sufficient knowledge to kind of make use of, extract that data onto, say, Power BI or any of the, platforms, and do their own kind of, data analytics, right? So this is, the moving from data lake to data mesh, that entire journey has given us a lot of benefits, right? And that's what, I have realized, right? And then, of course, spin has got very less to do with this. This is probably a story that could be replicated across multiple CPG organizations.
Wonderful. Thanks for that, Nithya. So, Shivani, kind of calling you in. So, when it comes to, organizations which interdepartmental data, large amounts of data, which is kind of largely true for the panel here. So data rests in different places, and to kind of give the right insights across departments. So while Nithya very fabulously said, business owns the data now. So how do you really look at this from a point of view that everybody kind of equitably gets access to the right data, to the right insights, such that internal and external stakeholders get to see the right thing? And how does that happen cost effectively? Because as you know, you have to really look at the cost of how you're kind of making that data accessible. So what's your journey at this point of time, and how are you really looking at the data mesh? What's your understanding?
First of all, thank you for having me here, and such a nice and very intellectual audience, I would say. Coming to the point, see, I think it needs to be evaluated in a very, very you can say intelligent way in terms of what you are looking out of it, the data end of the day, right? We have, I think all the organizations have crossed the journey of coming to the data lake or going to the cloud, and now what next? A lot of organizations are still not able to figure it out how to utilize that data to intelligence journey in a very, very fast, effective way, right? If I talk about my own or data science people journey, still we spend nearly 40 to 50% of our time cleaning the data. My point is not just having a data lake or data mesh, but create that platform which does the automation of creating or cleaning the data in a most effective way. Either it is data mesh, or something else tomorrow which can be able to do that job for me. So that platformization of the processes where half of the data can be cleaned by default, can be kept in a way, and also to create all the features and other things which can be easy for data science stream or analytics stream to be utilized in a much more easier way. Data mesh is a very new concept. Still, I think a lot of organizations have not even thought about it at this point of time. But the journey or the struggle what Nithya was talking about is commonly known, where we are not able to get access of right data, or we are queued up with so many jobs running in the organization because everyone is not getting the same importance. Solve that problem. Data mesh could be an issue, could be a solution, but that cost effectiveness needs to be done in a way where you don't need to create mesh of all the data, but identify the sectors which requires much faster calculations or much faster, you can say, processing time to start with. Because this comes an additional layer of entire security, your, you can say, CISO organization, everything. And every business unit will not be able to input so much of, you can say, money or you can say bandwidth and manpower to process that. Because that, see, authority is very good, but then you have to be responsible enough to take care of that data in a very, very holistic way.
Absolutely, absolutely, and that's a good point. So if I can, kind of bring Mehjabeen into the discussion. So Mehjabeen, how do you really look at it in your industry? Huge amounts of data again. So how do you really make accessibility? How do you break the silos, A? And how does a distributed data architecture, actually kind of give you that sort of a cost effectiveness as well? How do you really keep a control? How do you really keep your eyes on everything? If I may have some insights from you.
Shantheri, by the very concept of the definition of data mesh, what we are looking at is at decentralization of data. For years, I think since the inception of data strategy, we all have thought around having data in a central repository, how to bring in data from all sources, structured, unstructured. You get it into a central place, and then you have everything that your business needs at one place, so that you can, you can run dashboarding, you can run, data models, and whatever you want to do with it. Which also meant that you would have to have a set of data scientists and data engineers in place whose key skill set is basically to be able to play with the data and give business with the insights they want. Now what we are talking about is, just flipping the system upside down in a data mesh and saying that, okay, I don't want to have data in a centralized place, but I want to make the data domain-centric. So let's say a supply chain department has a data, small lake of its own. The customer service has a data silo of its own, and everybody has a separate data silo which is more accessible to them. And then this overall feeds into a main pipeline for the organizational data as well. This is what the architecture talks about. By the very definition, I think it makes a lot of sense for a company which generates huge amount of data, has got very specific use cases wherein you want to play with the data specific to a domain. If you are a company of a smaller size, the data mesh model might not be for you. A data lake is probably something which is going to suffice for you. So the data mesh has to find a solid use case in your scheme of things to be able to, then at the organization level, be able to contribute to the data fabric. This would also mean, very aptly pointed out by Shivani, that when you have a data mesh kind of a model, the skill set which is required for playing with the data needs to be available at the business or that domain-specific level as well, which is not present today. So for data analysis, they come to the central team, which has the data engineers and the data scientists. So you'll have to build that kind of a skill set at the domain level as well. And if it is not available, then you'll eventually come to a central team, which is going to, kind of kill the entire essence of the model. So it has to be very well thought through whether your organization has a need or a use case for a data mesh. But it can be a huge enabler in the AI journey of organizations, both the data mesh as well as the data lake. From cost perspective, because it's a recent, it's like the model came up in 2019. So it's yet to, kind of mature and find its footing. For now, it seems like this is going to be something which might be, if not less, be at like an equal, cost kind of a scenario with the existing centralized data teams. So with that perspective in hand, I think organizations with a lot of data sets and with very specific domain-related data insight requirements, this can be a model that works for them.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you for that concise note. Deepika, bringing you in. So the thing is, perhaps at some level, the data mesh approach also requires a sort of a technical, a structural rethink or an overhaul at some level. So regulated industries kind of have this hesitation, right? The more regulated the organization or the industry is, the more the hesitation may be in terms of looking at a rethink in terms of how your data architecture should work. So is that true? I mean, is there a feasible way of looking at the data mesh? And how does it work? What's your journey here?
Okay, so first of all, thank you for the organizers for inviting me here. So whatever I have seen in my data science journey so far, data mesh in a financial industry, as you rightly said, it's slightly complicated to adopt because we have regulations on RBI, we have for PII, and it's anyways going on board now across. You cannot onboard any service which has servers outside India. So all these auditory compliances, etc. As a concept, it's good. But I think the main meat is in execution, if you can execute it well, because the main issue is with governance. So I'll give an example of one of the teams who have pretty much, I think, a partial onboarding of this architecture, and then we see that governance, so they are the owners of the data, but who's governing it, who's owning it, right? So when it comes to a team, just like our team on the data science side, who are creating some insights, and we see this trend doesn't seem right. In case we have seen, in case this data is already existing and we have seen some insights in the past, and we do a smell check, we see, okay, this doesn't look right. Can we please go back and check with the team who has been owning it? And then we see, okay, there is some issue, there is some mapping issue, there is some XYZ issues, and that is why insights are wrong. So who's actually governing it? So it's practically a co-owned thing, but not really, nobody's taking the ownership of it. So I think execution is actually, execution and ownership, so that the governance is in place. I feel in terms of implementation, my sense is start small, because you can figure out the domains which are having heavily complex data, or maybe difficult for a data scientist or the people who are producing insights to understand. Let the ownership lies on the business teams. They will understand the data properly, what each of the columns means, what kind of data resides, and then it moves to a central team, and then whatever insights are produced henceforth. Also, adding compliance as a part of your architecture itself. So you have everything, whatever is required is in place right from the inception, so that we are having these auditory trails, etc. Everything is in place. Creating all those self-service dashboards, self-service data platforms, which will help all the business users to access the data directly rather than depending on the teams to give them insights. This is what I feel. I think ideally it should be done that way.
Absolutely. So it's interesting you spoke about data ownership, right? And the think through that is required on that. So Sindhu, bringing you into the discussion. So again, very, when you look at financial services and banking, how would you view your, teams, and where your data mesh journey is, and what is your hesitations, and what are you wary of at this point of time?
Firstly, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity, and hello, everyone. In the banking industry, right, in my past experience also, other industries that I have worked, right, data mesh is a concept. I think there are organizations who have adopted it already. May not be, physical architecture, but from the concept perspective, there are organizations who have started their journey, right? From regulatory perspective, right, standpoint, I think if at all we want to go ahead and adopt this data mesh architecture, it is very crucial to understand whether the architecture, conflicts with the, regulatory requirements. There are various regulatory requirements, global requirements, as well as the local regional requirements. So you have to ensure that these are, ruled out, and then as Deepika mentioned, right, make your architecture compliant by design, right? And governance, yes, of course. It's not that you design and implement and leave it. it's a journey. You start with something, and towards the end, it's continuous journey. And if you leave it, if you don't govern it properly, it can get derailed, and it can be very cost expensive, I would say. So governance is very important. And at the beginning of the journey itself, start with small. Practice your compliance governance rules, and see if that can be presented to regulators. Not possible all the time, but demonstrate the use case of regulatory requirements well in advance and get their feedback.
Yeah, that's true. Better to be safe than to be sorry, right? Great. So those are great points in terms of where your journeys are. So let's do a very quick trend dipstick, At this point of time, maybe Mehjabeen, I'll start with you. So do you really believe that, data infrastructure as a platform or a service kind of effectively address the idea of a data mesh model? Yes, no. What are your thoughts around this?
Data infrastructure. Okay. Data infrastructure as a service, I don't think it really might fit into a data mesh kind of a architecture, because here we are distributing ownerships. And when you take something as a service, you try and centralize ownership at one place.
Correct. So that defeats the
whole purpose of it. So in my opinion, it might not, but technology people are very smart. So I don't know, in future they might have come up with something which is
so there's something called jugaad, right?
Some jugaad, yes. I guess so.
Great.
Yeah.
Shivani, your thoughts around this?
I think I agree with what Mehjabeen has said. See, if we look from a business perspective, they do want to own the data, and it's not only data. I think when we came to analytics or AI structure, I think 10 years back, it used to be a horizontal team which used to cut across all the, you can say, verticals and used to work as a central team. But that central team has divided into now decentralized, and it is vertical specific. So data is also getting there, but it's just that matter of time where business units are going to own that entire data, the data engineers who will know the data really well. That's the key to it. And as you rightly said, that engineers will identify to get the right architecture, either it is by, you can say, lines of engineering or jugaad would be the way to work.
Great. So good we introduced that word into this discussion. So Nithya, while the idea of data democratization is prime, in terms of, that's the one word that comes up when you think of a data mesh architecture. But also this easier said than done. Does this truly increase data productivity as a whole within the teams that own it? What do you think could be the possible pitfalls? So Deepika pointed out some of it. Ownership is one big problem, What else do you see as pitfalls?
See, ownership is one problem, but not the biggest problem, right? What the biggest problem is the skilling of the business teams in order to be able to use this data, right, within their data mesh, right, their domain-specific data mesh, and to be able to kind of synthesize and generate insights and make decisions out of it, right? And I think some of us pointed out on the skilling aspect of it, right? So earlier, we had a very central IT team, and then 90% of the cases, we still have a very central IT team, right? All the IT skills focused there, and then we have a business team and a domain team, all domain and business skills focused there. So there was no cross-pollination, right? But now we are in a world, we cannot be thinking in such silos, right? If we were to ensure that we democratize data, we democratize insights, we need to cross-pollinate technology skills with business understanding and domain knowledge, right? So what we are trying to do is we are having domain knowledge within our team, right, in order to be able to support the specific businesses. And at the same time, because we are giving data in the hands of the business, we also are ensuring that, the business teams have the right skills, right, curated, skills in order to be able to generate insights out of this data. So skilling and how we kind of do that is going to be one of the key aspects of it. Apart from that, I think, it all also depends on, the usefulness of the analytics, right, which comes out of it. Now the data is in hands of everybody, right? Now everybody is free to come up with their own insights, but the point is which of them is something which is enterprise authentic or enterprise certified, right? So there is also a whole lot of process that we have built in order to certify the insights that can be used across the enterprise vis-a-vis kind of somebody's ad hoc analysis, right? So there are multiple, from a skill as well as from a governance perspective, multiple things need to be done to get the data and analytics democratization outcome the way we desire it.
Absolutely, well said on that. And I'm keeping a tight watch on the time there. So very quickly, maybe I'll check back with Deepika as well as with Sindhu. Do you believe that a federated data governance approach will actually solve the data security challenge? Deepika, your thoughts?
Okay, so on papers, yes, I believe it will. But on execution and when we come to, see, I think governance will only, it involves a lot of time of people, right? And in case we have the right ownerships in place and still, somebody has to still govern that, is it getting solved or not? And you have multiple teams who are utilizing this data. Some insight is produced by business teams, some by analytics teams, some by tech teams, and which one is right? We don't know. And then once we see something is not right, it requires a lot of time and energy of all the cross collaborations, just figuring out why this number is not matching, how did you produce this, last year number was this, and now you're saying something else, trends
Where did you land this upon?
Exactly. So now you see a lot of, again, it comes to the same question, which one was right? So this is what our SLT end up asking. So governance is there, but though we are trying to adopt this kind of architecture to improve our productivity, better insights, better control, if not properly, because the governance is not really really picking up people and figuring out what went wrong, it really actually destroys productivity of people, because I have to spend a lot of time in just collaboration and figuring out and going to the ground just to see what is right, what is not. Right? So
absolutely.
Yeah.
It's like that bank reconciliation statement where you really can't figure out the missing number, right?
Exactly. I'm talking from the same perspective, how your numbers aren't matching and you presented a different insight last year and now this is completely different you're saying. So how did it happen? Sure. Right? And then we figure out there was some small little error and not taken care of by somebody, and then we see the entire different trend.
The reason I brought that analogy is I did enough BRSs in the early part of my career, so couldn't help saying it. Yes, Sindhu, very quickly from you.
To answer your question regarding would federated governance help with data mesh, I would say yes, because although with mesh concept, the ownership of the data products are decentralized, but with federated governance approach, I think the policies and the procedures they use, right, for governing are all centralized, right? For example, what level of access controls you're putting, how you're managing the data privacy, etc. With this federated approach, it will give or allow, I would say, centralized team within the organization to oversee how the individual domains or businesses are governing, and there will be, when you say federated governance, collaboration is very important. For example, stewards from each these business areas will collaborate with the centralized team and ensure that security challenges are identified and fixed proactively. That's my view.
Perfect. So I think we're kind of overshot on time, but we've done well for ourselves. So on that note, I think our leaders here have very quickly given us an overview on where they are on and how they're really looking at a relatively new concept such as the data mesh. Very interesting insights, and I think all of them are going to be around for a while. For if you have any FAQs, AMAs, I always say, please feel free to reach out to them. Thank you so much, each one of you, Shivani, Nithya, Mehjabeen, Deepika, and Sindhu for joining us. And signing off for now, thank you so much.